Alex, we're glad you're here to discuss things through with us. Before we do, why don't we just look at that top 10 list, guys? Here we go. At number 10, we have Gamora. Number 1, her first solo series. Number 9, Moon Knight. Number 3, the Rod Reese 1 in 25 variant. By the way, that's the first appearance of Hunter's Moon. At number 8, we have The Boys 24, the first appearance of the G-Wiz. Number 7, we have Nebula. Number 1, that's her first solo series. At number 6, we have Venom, Lethal Protector. Number 1. At number 5, we have Gun Honey. Number 1, that Adam Hughes trade dress. At number 4, we have Babylon 5. Number 1, the first comic iteration. Number 3, we have Moon Knight. Number 3, which again is the first appearance of Hunter's Moon. At number 2, we have Department H. Number 1. And at number 1, we have Fantastic Four 358, the first appearance of Payback, the Power Scroll. Look at this face, guys. Look at this. He is just pumped for that top 10 list. Absolutely. I feel like you have like Flashdance. She's a maniac.
Oh, yeah.
Maniac. That's exactly what we're looking for right there. All right, Chris. Here we go. What do you got, man? What do you got? Dissect it for us. Give us your 3 most interesting books. Give us your first book you want to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, look, a bit of I think a lighthearted picks, if that even makes sense this week. But let's just go into it. Number 3 for me, Gamora. Number 1. Nothing big in terms of, this book is a huge spec and it's blowing up and it's going to make lots of money and make me rich. I picked this book just because I think it's very interesting with what's going on with these Guardian of the Galaxy characters. Looking at the numbers, it had a weekly increase of 109% in a 9.8 high, sold for $80. So very, very affordable 9.8, which speaks to the value of this book still. But the fact that people are turning to it, the first solo series of Gamora, we've had the first solo series of Nebula, number 1, on the list for the last couple of weeks now. And it kind of goes to what I was talking about last week in my picks in our top 10. I really feel like this is a situation where it's not necessarily just speculators buying in a book saying, that's going to be hot. This is, in large part, in my humble opinion, collectors that are really, being tied to the movies in the MCU, and it's bringing them back into the comic books. I just think what James Gunn did with Guardians, their role over the last 7 years now since the first film, and then knowing that they got the new movie coming out, I absolutely just think that these characters are here to stay in the minds, in the hearts of the audiences that both love the films, love the TV shows, and love the comic books as well. So that's why I picked this book. I just think this is something that's going to continue to happen with certain characters, especially characters that weren't already like legacy characters before the MCU, right? So I'm not saying that this book is going to be a hot item in terms of dollar amount or something to invest in or speculate on. I just like that these Guardian characters are getting love right now.
That's well said. They are in the hearts and minds of like mainstream audiences now.
Cover art for that book.
What's that?
Who did that cover art? That cover is sick.
Yeah, it is. That's a good question. We can look that up.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
we'll look that up right now. But before we do, before we move on to the next book, we need to get an update on how many subs you have.
Yeah, let's do it.
Before we do that,
yeah.
Alex, before we do that, this guy keeps trolling you. I can't stand that guy.
That's slander. That's fake news. You need to boot that guy.
Absolutely. That's your second warning, buddy. All right, Chris, moving on. What is your second most interesting pick?
All right, man. Sometimes you just got to go with
Chris, let me ask you this. Does sex sell?
Well, if you would have let me finish what I was saying, sometimes you just have to go with a hot cover. Maybe we should throw this guy on a cover and see if it sells.
Oh, man.
It will sell.
That would go through the roof.
You remember Jim Lee's X-Men? Yeah, yep. I'm gonna beat that.
Yep.
Oh, totally.
My number 2 pick, Gun Honey number 1. Gun Honey number 1, Adam Hughes trade dress. So, look, I'm a big fan of Adam Hughes stuff, and Adam Hughes obviously did something with this cover. Now, here's the thing. I put it on this list not just because of the cover, but because of what it means of why it made the top 10 list in the first place, okay? First off, let's look at the numbers. 178% increase in sales with a $30 high raw copy. Look, this already dropped back down to recent sales of $12. So I've said this before when I picked books that strictly are selling because of a hot cover. The power of a hot cover, right? The thing is this, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because there's so many people out there that say, like, whether it's variants, you're buying it for the variant or just the artist or the cover itself. Oh, people are gonna get burnt out. Variants are ruining the hobby. And then you look at what this book did. It peaked at 30, came back down to earth at $12. I guarantee you, the people, and I've said this before, the people that bought this book for $30, they're not going anywhere. They're not leaving the hobby. They're probably still just happy that they got it, because the trend of variants getting hot, spiking, and then coming back down, not all of them, but a lot of them, especially a lot of the incentive variants, they do that. And guess what? The cover market, the variant market, the incentive market continues to get stronger and stronger and stronger over time. So what I would say to this is, look, it's a nice cover. If you're into this and you want to pay that kind of money, fine. But I wouldn't look at this as a long-term investment thing. All right. If you wanted it to flip, you should have pre-ordered them, got them for cover price, flipped them for that $30. You can even flip them now for $12. But who knows where it's going to be at in a month or 2 months or a year from now. But it just shows, look, people like to collect covers and they're willing to pay. And it's still a positive thing that's bringing health into the hobby. I don't see it as a negative thing whatsoever.
Yeah, it's bringing attention to that book. As Mark Lineker says, hold please. On top of the cover, it's actually a good read too. I'm excited to read it myself. I wasn't reading it during the show. I have responsibilities as well. So, Alex, we want your thoughts on this book though.
If you've seen any of my videos, I always talk about I suck and I don't look at previews. I haven't even heard of this book, honestly. But you were like how Chris was talking about like variants and stuff. I'm not a big variant guy, but I'm like, just because it's out there doesn't mean I don't have to buy it. Like, right. I agree. Like the whole people saying like variants are killing them, killing the comic book industry. I'm like, just because it's there doesn't mean you have to buy it. It's
exactly.
I think it's just that simple. I'm not big into, me personally, like sexualized covers, but that doesn't mean that there's not a market for it. So, it's just not for me, but I don't even know what the story is. So the story could be completely different from that cover. I do think sex sells, but like, if I saw that on the shelf and I walked into a shop, I wouldn't pick it up, but that doesn't mean there isn't a market for it. And if they're selling, what do I care? I'm glad that books are selling.
Right. That's exactly what it comes down to. This hobby that we love, we're just glad that it's drawing attention and and moving things along. But I can't wait to read it. I have heard good things about it. And Mark Lineker says that again, he's got on top of the cover. It's actually a good read. That's what's most important. Yeah. That's what'll keep things going. You could have all this fluff and stuff like that on the outside, but if there's no substance on the inside, forget about it. Just forget about it. Speaking of substance, where are we at with that sub? Your subs?
Oh, so I checked. We're at 302.
Woo, we did it, guys! All saved comic book canon, everybody, and we pushed Alex over the 300. So.
But I also lost someone on Instagram, so
shame.
It evens out.
Shame on them.
I don't.
It was probably a bot, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. Oh God, I love those. Those are so great.
All right.
Yep.
Here we go, Chris.
All right.
Your final book on this top 10 list that you find most interesting. What would it be? What could it be? Actually, let's have a get. Alex, what is it out of the top 10? Here we go. I'm going to bring it up for you one more time. What is it? What did he pick? What did he pick, Alex?
I'm really stuck between Moon Knight and Venom. And
okay. Make a choice.
I'm going to go Venom.
Venom?
Well, I lied. I'm going Moon Knight.
Which Moon Knight? The one in 25? or the cover A?
125.
Okay. All right, Chris. Time for you to tell us what you got.
Well, if I would have picked the Moon Knight, I would have talked about both, as I usually do. I did pick Moon Knight last week, so I didn't pick it again this week. I'd be saying the same thing. But good choice, because like I said, I picked it last week, right? Ooh, look at that.
That's a beautiful looking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, your other one, the Venom one. So when I did my picks this week, I picked my number 1 pick. I had my number 2 pick. And then my number 3 pick was a bit of a tough one. As you guys know, I picked the Gamora book, but I almost picked the Venom book. I almost did, but I had to talk about the love for the Guardian character. So very, very close in your picks. My number 1 is Fantastic Four, 358. First, Pybok, the Power Scroll, not the Super Scroll, the Power Scroll. I don't know what I feel about this. 177% increase in sales. Now, here's why I say I don't know how I feel about this. This character is rumored to appear in the Secret Invasion TV show. And so what do? We go out and find the books for the characters. This book was a, back issue, $2-3 bin back issue book. I know I have one. I might have a couple. I know I probably didn't pay more than $1 for it or them. But you get a high 9.8 selling for $325. Oh my freaking goodness. All right, let me just say this, folks. Let me just say this. I think for those that watch my channel and watch me here on Comic Book Canon, I am always very, very optimistic and positive about the hobby and let collectors do what they want to do and all this stuff. But the one area where I'm, especially lately, a bit hesitant with is the 9.8 market. It just really, and look, I'm not hating. If somebody had the money to spend $325 on this book in a CGC 9.8, where you could probably find it for in near mint condition for under $5 in a back issue bin, and then spend, $25 to go send it to CGC and get it graded, fine. As long as you're happy. But it's crazy. It's crazy. And then you guys know how I feel about the grading industry, and not just with CGC. Unless there's a 9.6 with a known defect that is not pressable. And we know that many 9.6s, even like 9.4s and even 9.2s sometimes, the only defects that they might have sometimes are pressable defects. So we know that 9.6s often are the only thing they have wrong with them is a pressable defects, to where you can press it up, clean it, send it back in to CGC and possibly, or CBCS, get a 9.8. We know that there's some times where you don't even have to press the book up. You can just send it back and forth a few times. One day it'll get a 9.6, the next day it'll get a 9.8. And the same goes for 9.8s. You crack this 9.8 that's sold for $325, send it back into CGC, and the next day it might get a 9.6. And I bet a 9.6 probably isn't even selling for over $100. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't know that for a fact. You guys go do some research. And it just worries me. It worries me about the 9.8 market, because this is one area of the comic book market that I think it leaves a crack in the foundation. I always say variants aren't ruining comic books. Speculators and flippers aren't ruining comic books. They all have their place in the woven web of comic book collecting in the comic book industry. Even graded comics. And, I'm not huge on graded books, but I enjoy, every year I'll send a few keys out to get graded. All right. But I have the problems that I have with the grading industry, with the lack of transparency and consistency, and the problems that I have with how that translate into the difference between 9.6 and a 9.8, and the problems with the fact that a 9.8 and a 9.6 price range is usually twice, triple, even sometimes more, which means if it's a bigger book, it can mean hundreds of dollars. If it's a huge key book, it can mean thousands of dollars difference. just depending on somebody's mood one day. And it concerns me. Look, I don't know what this character's role is going to be in the MCU. I don't see it as being something extremely huge to where this book can hold an extreme value. It's an early 90s book, and there's a lot of them out there, probably a lot of them in high grade. It is a black cover, but I'm an advocate for saying that just because a book has a large print run or was made in the 90s doesn't mean it can't gain value. It absolutely can. Absolutely. And remember, supply and demand only relates to the amount on the market available at a time. So if a book has a 500,000 print run, but 400,000 people have a copy of that book in their collection and they're not selling them, they're holding on to them, there can be scarcity on the market for a high print run book if the demand is higher than the availability on the market at that given time. The price of these books can absolutely increase. But with all that being said, guys, I get concerned with these 9.8s. I mean, $325. You can almost go buy a 9.6. It's a little more than this now. I think it's hitting almost to the 500 mark. But even just a couple months ago, a 9.6 of a Wolverine limited series #1 was selling around this price point. And which, if you want to talk about return on investment, I mean, come on, like I said, just a few months ago, it's already increased definitely over $100 from where it was at. So there's just, if you're doing these things, if you're putting money out there for investment purposes, spending $325 on this book is just, it's like putting all your eggs in one basket. And, even if you were betting on LeBron James, would you bet on LeBron James if he broke his foot? I wouldn't. I don't know if that's a great analogy.
Like, not a good analogy, but I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying, right? It's just like it's not smart to me. It's not.
That's a tough one too, because the speculation in terms of that character making it to the MCU, $325. I don't know. I honestly don't know the rationale behind that, unless maybe it's one of those kind of eBay kind of fakes, you know what I mean? Like, is somebody buying it just to increase the price? Yeah. But Jesus, man, that why don't we take a look here at what cover price has this for in terms of like most recent 9.8 sales. So we're looking at Fantastic Four. Was it $398? You said
$358.
$358. My bad. Again, those Legos, guys. Those Legos takes me away from everything. If you're late to the show, you just got to do the rewind. They're saying a fair market value is $260. Let's see what we're looking at in terms of.
But how many have sold? And that's another thing you have to take into consideration for fair market value. Yeah.
So we had October 325 on the 1st of October. On September 28th, $130. So what? That's 3 days away, 3 days apart.
Yep. And I guarantee you, add those two up and divide it by 2. There's your fair market value.
Time out. We got May 2021, $110.
Yep.
And then in February 2021, $99.
Yeah. So it's crazy.
You're looking at $60 for a 9.6 on September 28th.
Yep.
So again, I don't know, guys. I think if you're going to be spending $325, I think your money will be better served buying books that already have some steam, already have some substance. Like, you could probably get an Amazing Spider-Man Annual 16 for a decent price. You probably get a few of those for $325 raw, right? And there's speculation she's already in the MCU, but there's speculation she may have her own series as well. So that's just one example.
Yeah, and this book is selling raw. I mean, there's a near, they call it near mint. You never know. $9.99 that just sold today. There was a best offer accepted. It was a $20, but best offer.
I mean,
accepted.
Come on. Don't be paying $325 for a 9.8. That's insane.
Exactly. So you could have spent $15 on a raw copy, pressed and cleaned it, sent it in, and maybe got a 9.8. So yeah, I mean the highest raw was yesterday at 13 bids for $20.50. So and that was a newsstand. That was a newsstand.
A newsstand too.
So it's just crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
guys.
Alex, your thoughts?
I mean, I would never pay that money for it. If I'm going with a 90s book, if I'm gonna pay that much, it's gonna be an X-Force polybagged #1 with a Deadpool card.
There you go.
Perfect investment.
I mean, yeah.
See, this isn't good for me because if you watch any of my stuff, I don't do speculation.
Yeah.
That's fine too. Again, that's fine.
I would never pay anything close to this.
So honestly, your like raw emotions and your thoughts, your reaction to a 9.8 $325 for a book like this.
You're crazy.
There you go. That's exactly what we're looking for right
now. Like you can get so many like key books for that. And I'm not a speculator, but I'm kind of like I would describe myself as like the collector, like from like the MCU. I just like I'll hoard all the books. Just give them.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is. Like I'm all about. I had like a tagline for a little bit. It was like no speculation, just comic book accumulation, and I'll just collect all of them. Just like. So I'm not big on speculation, but I also like to collect books that have a history to it and, a story behind it.
Sure.
And this one just came out of nowhere. And I'm like, but I mean, I was going to interrupt you earlier and be like, why wouldn't they go for like the Super Scroll issue, which is, I think, like FF18? But then, they haven't even introduced the Fantastic Four. So then the Super Scroll wouldn't make any sense to put in this. So, after the John Byrne run, it's like,
I agree. Yeah.
The John Byrne run Fantastic Four was like the best run to me. I'd even consider that higher than like the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, which is blasphemous. But John Byrne's FF run is.
He has so many classic stories from that run. That could be a whole show on its own. We love John Byrne here. We talk about him quite a bit.